Good morning, everyone. I'm glad you could join us. My name is Rhonda Tulk-Lane, and I'm the Director of Business Solutions with the St. John's Board of Trade. And I want to welcome you to what could be the coldest day on record in our history for this date. Not a good thing. Hopefully we'll be getting back to some summer weather as we move through the week. Fingers crossed. I'm excited to introduce our, I have to say, expert presenter today. As we move through COVID, we had a lot of members and potential new business members reaching out. They were trying to understand better how to import into Canada, whether it was you were bringing in potentially PPE or you were looking to bring in a new product to grow your business. And this is how this session was born. And we have a great group with us today. And so for those of you, we'll be also recording the session today, and you'll be able to watch this on demand or share it with your colleagues or any of your potential business partners as we learn how to export into Canada. So, and there'll be a Q&A in a little later on after Deborah finishes. So I'm excited today to introduce to you VP of Custom Consulting. Deborah is responsible for overseeing the company's custom brokerage and custom consulting compliance services across Canada. She is a licensed custom broker and a certified supply chain management professional. Over the course of her career, she has played a key role in enhancing performance standards through a combination of process reengineering and dedicated to compliance strategy execution. A senior manager with over 30 years experience in implementing custom brokerage and trade compliance programs across the US and Canada. Deborah has provided strategic direction and training support to a diverse range of industries. And I think we have a really good mix of different industries and businesses with us today. She has a proven expertise in developing corporate policies and procedures while setting company-wide compliance priorities. Deborah is internationally recognized and for identifying improve accountability and accomplish KPIs and profitable goals. She regularly hosts custom training seminars and workshops to assist business owners, custom brokers, importers, exporters, managers, and purchasing agents, and lawyers and buyers on a variety of Canada-US custom-related topics. Deborah was recently part of a COVID task force for both Supply Chain Canada and Maritimes Energy Association, an active member of the Importers Exporter Association, Supply Chain Canada, and the CSCB. In 2019, Deborah was named one of the top 100 most influential women in the Canadian supply chain. So folks, you indeed have an expert with you this morning who will give us some insight and high level on importing into Canada. So Deborah, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the great introduction. Welcome everybody to learning about how to import into Canada. It's a high-level overview to new importers, or if you're thinking about importing, or if you have been importing for many years, however, do not understand the full process of what's involved. Well, first of all, we're going to, this is an overview of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to have an introduction to ourselves. The first one, of course, we can't leave CBSA out in the cold, to kind of give you an overview of what they're responsible for and their role in this, as well as you as the importer, your responsibilities, and how CBSA views you as totally, total liability is on your shoulders. And what do you need to do to prepare to import, and what all the documentation that's required. And lots of other good stuff. As you can see, there's a list of 11 topics that we're going to go through. And again, we're just going to go through a high-level overview of what you need to know. First of all, we're going to introduce you to P.F. Collins. We've been in business since 1921. Not me personally, because as earlier, I've been in the business 30 years or more. I started when I was 5. For those people who want to know my age. We also On top of doing just customs clearance and consulting, we have a marine agency department, immigration department that can handle all the immigration needs for your executives or people coming into the country. We also can arrange for US clearances and freight forwarding. So virtually we can do all the paperwork and the physical flow of the goods themselves. Now, what would we do without CBSA? They're a very integral part of this whole process, as well as the customs broker, freight forwarder, importer, vendor, and all the others. They actually administer more than 90 acts and regulations. That is what we also have to be familiar with in order to make sure that your goods are going to come into the country on an easy flow. Okay, so these are just some of the examples of the acts that they follow. They do a lot, and there's a lot that they need to know and help and assist with. So they're administered, they don't make the rules, they administer the rules. The two main things that they're responsible for in the country is to make sure they protect the economy of the country and along with the national security. That's a big job for really not a huge amount of people involved. So we want to make sure that when we go to sleep at night, we wake up in the morning and we have a morning to wake up to. That's basically their job. They have a big job. They have three main business lines: the commercial trade, which is what we're going to be talking about mainly today, enforcement and intelligence, and of course the traveler end of things. Now, you as an importer, you're 100% responsible to every agency and CBSA for all the information and documentation that's presented. You have to maintain and keep records of all the information and documents up to 6 years, which means that you have to keep track of your contracts, your purchase orders to your vendors, your commercial invoices, your payment to your vendors, your shipping and receiving reports. When they do an audit, this is all the stuff that they look for. And they want to make sure that everything is in line with the information that's presented at the time of release. If you have any errors or corrections that need to be done, you should be notifying your broker immediately as you know about it, because it's called voluntary compliance. You have 90 days to correct something after you have discovered it. So when you get your invoices in from your customs broker and all the other documents that I mentioned, is review them for errors. The customs broker is not responsible for the information that goes to customs. So many people do not realize that. You are, as the importer, is ultimately the party responsible. The first thing you want to do is register for GST or obtain a business number. You need a business number in order to import into Canada. You do not need to be GST registered to import into Canada. If you are not GST registered, you would not be able to claim your ITC credit on any of your imported goods, but that's your business decision. But in any event, you would want to get a business number registered with Business Windows in Ottawa. The next thing you want to do is you want to research your product. You want to research to make sure that you get the right tariff classification. What are all the regulations when you import on that particular product? Every product that comes into Canada, doesn't matter if it's raw material, finished product, semi-manufactured goods, somebody's got their hand in there to say yay or nay. There's lots of other agencies involved at the time of import other than CBSA. So you have to know your goods to make sure that they qualify for import, and if they do qualify for import, what do you need to do and what other information may be required or forms or documents at the time that it comes into Canada. There's lots of things that we have to look at. All those 90 acts and regulations, we as the custom broker have to determine that too before we submit the paperwork to customs, and we submit the paperwork electronically. So all our information that goes to CBSA is a mirror image of the physical documents. There are exceptions to that when they want to look at paperwork on certain things. However, for the most part, it's all done electronically. There's duties. There's also what's called anti-dumping duties. These are something you really want to do research on, because the last thing you want to get caught at is to find that you're importing a good under the Special Import Measures Act that's calling for a 300% duty. That's 300% they want of the goods, the value of the goods that you imported. So that can make a big difference. Is there excise tax, excise duty, and of course GST. A lot of people don't realize that there's a lot more that may have to be paid at the time of import other than just duty and GST. Tariff treatment, that's important to know. What country are you importing these goods from? Where were they originally manufactured? Because we can apply the right tariff treatment to hopefully reduce the amount of duty involved. And then there's valuation. Everybody thinks that that's simple. It's not. Valuation is a totally complete presentation all in itself, and how to determine the proper value for goods at the time of import. For the majority of this, we're going to assume that you are buying the goods and it's a strict sell and buy from your vendor. So in that case, it's pretty simple. Well, when you're going to be doing your research, you want to make sure you know what you're researching. So the first thing you want to do is clearly understand what is it that you're going to be importing. You have to make that clear to the broker. We have to make that clear to customs, as well as any other participating agency. Some people think it's simple as saying, well, it's a shirt. Well, no, it's not. Anything is never that simple. You want to understand really what is the product. What does it actually, is it designed to do? It's not just the name. It's not just the tariff. What is the goods? What is it made out of? What is the material composition? It's great to have some product brochures, mill certificates, and that's when you're bringing in things like steel and that, because that's important, because we need to know, say you're bringing in a steel rod, we need to know, is it iron steel or stainless steel? What's the size and dimensions? What the diameter of it? Is it coated? Is it in rust? What is the grade of the steel? All of that is determined for the tariff classification, as well as any possible CMA duties, etc. Whether we have to get an import permit, is it under a general quota? All of that is really important. And some people, that is one of the main things that brokers have a very frustration on, is when we get the paperwork, all we have is, it's part number 1, 2, 3, description is an SWC. You go, what do you mean you don't know what that is? So we have to phone, and now we have the delay in the clearance. We have to ask, go back and say, well, what is this? And do all the research at that time. The research is better for you if you do it up front. The end use and the end user. Now, there's different industries that we have what's called end use codes that may be applicable to remove duty. Example would be commercial fishing industry. Now, it's not just carte blanche. It goes in hand with what the product is, what the product is used for, and who is using it, or who is the intended user of the product. Goods for use in the manufacture of original vehicles have a code that removes it. However, if you're bringing it in for aftermarket, it does not qualify. So all of that's really important to know, to let your broker know, or you do the research from the beginning right up to the very end of where it's going, or what you're doing with it, and who you're selling it to. Now, we want to determine the tariff treatment to make sure that you're going to get all the benefits of all the trade agreements that Canada makes with all the different other countries. In order to do that, we need to know what the country of origin is. The country of origin doesn't mean where it's shipped from. The country of origin means where were the goods manufactured? What was the last place of the final finishing product of those goods in manufacture? Where was it exported from? Both of those two elements go into deciding what tariff treatment to use. Example, US, we have the CUSMA, formerly NAFTA. But it's being exported from China. Now I'm just going to be using that. I know that doesn't sound logical, but anyways, it's being exported from China. Well, China doesn't have a trade agreement, they're not under CUSMA, so we cannot apply the CUSMA duty-free based on that the goods were manufactured there. We will have to use the most favored nation, the default, because China right now does not have any agreement with us, but it wouldn't have mattered anyways because it was where the goods manufactured and exported. Now under CETA, there's lots of countries over there in Europe under CETA. It can be made in Norway?
No, Norway's not CETA.
Okay.
UK right now.
Okay, UK right now, and it's being exported out of Germany? Okay, that's okay. You can still apply CETA because both countries qualify under the same trade agreement. Okay, so you're preparing to import. With all that, once you have the proper description and know what your goods are, you want to know, well, what am I going to pay in duty? First most. Okay, here's a great little tool that's put out by the Government of Canada, and it's a tariff finder. First of all, if we have paperwork that just says motor, that's not going to cut it. You're not going to find the right tariff. So you're going to have to know the motor. What we have here, we have a motor, it's electric, it's AC, it's single phase, and we need to know the watts. So I'm just going to give you an example. And for down here's a drop down. I just happened to pick Chile. I typed in motor. Fine. And here we have all different types of motors. Every single one of them will lead you into a different tariff, so you have to, that's why they're asking you these questions. So you're going to do electric, because that's what I determined we've got. That's an AC. We already know it's 4,000 watts, so that's over 37.5. And we've already determined it's a single phase. There you go. So now it's telling me, well, which one of these have I got? Now we know that it's 4,000, so it's going to be over this. So I click on that, confirm. And then this gives you review. And you can print it, whatever, down here, because it'll give you the tariff treatment that Chile falls under, the rate of duty that you're going to pay, which is free. Now, if you did not have a certificate of origin for Chile, and this is important because you have to understand every trade agreement has different forms that go with that to verify that it falls under the rules and regulations. So if you don't have a certificate origin for Chile, the default is most favored nation. Now, in this case, it's duty-free anyways, which is good. But that it's a really good, it tells you all the notes. It's a good search tool put in by the government. The next thing we need to know is evaluation. And we need to know with that, we want to know, well, what is the reason that you're importing? Is it for sale? Is it for lease? Is it a temporary import? All of those reasons, we can apply different things to it as well. Okay, an example would be if you were importing a crane, but the crane is, say, also, it's a part of a big project, but it's coming in under several loads or importations. There's a way that we can do that to save you, that you don't have to break down that crane for every single part on every single shipment and their values with that. But that is all done in the research up front. The terms and conditions. You want to be using your current Incoterms, okay, and be looking at Incoterms 2020, as well as deductions and other charges. Some items we have to add into the value of the goods. Other items we can deduct out of the value of the goods for you to pay the duty. Okay, so example, freight. Freight charges to the point of destination. If they show it on the paperwork that it's included and they give us the value of the freight that they've included, we can take that and back it out so you're not paying duty and GST on that. So have them break out, and this is what you want to tell your vendor, is have them break out all the charges as much as they're willing to tell you on the paperwork coming to customs. So your broker can then determine what needs to be included in and what we can back out. The next thing, as I mentioned before, CBSA isn't the only party that's going to have a look into your goods to see if they're going to be released. Some are in conjunction with the other, and some aren't. Like CFIA, Canadian Food Inspection Agency, they're responsible for agriculture, public health, environment, and climate. They will simultaneously release the goods at the same time. Okay, and then there's a lot of extra forms that they may need depending on what the goods are. And some things as simple as a wood product, it doesn't matter what it is, if it's made out of wood, they want confirmation on different data elements. Natural Resource Canada, they do things, they govern things such as anything that's an energy efficient devices, such as a refrigerator, air conditioner. Transport Canada, of course, for those automobiles that you want to buy in Florida and bring up, as well as any tires. So all of that, they might have their own regulations or information that we have to transmit at time of release. What if the goods aren't even allowed here? Last thing you want to do is import it and then find out that no, you can't import that. And now you're stuck with a big freight bill. Your vendor's saying that's your problem. I still want my money. So you want to make sure that they're allowed into Canada. Now, the countries that we currently have sanctions against is the ones that are mentioned here. So, you know, you want to make sure that some other countries we have certain sanctions on in certain types of goods, but these ones we have pretty well carte blanche. Whether they're restricted or they're subject to permits or they're subject to quotas or other requirements, you cannot just say cheese. You can't import just cheese on your own. They're under quota, so you have to make the yearly quota beforehand to even import that. Alcohol products, you know, you went over to Turkey, you went in and you tasted some wine, you thought this is great, it's only 50 cents a bottle, and you're going ching ching, I can make, oh my gosh, I can just bring a whole pile of crates back and make big money with this. I don't find that anywhere, and look how cheap it is, and I'll sell it to the LCBO and they'll just sell it and all's good. Well, it's not that simple. That you cannot bring in alcohol. It's as simple as that, okay? That's why we have the liquor control boards in every province. In fact, it's so much we have interprovincial trade. So if you have you won't even find in all the liquor stores wines that are made in BC because each province deals with each province. And a lot of people didn't realize that we even have interprovincial trade regulations in Canada, the same as the States has, that you can't transport liquor from one state to another. It's the same kind of principle. Steel products, such as that, we have to get permits for them. And if you don't and it's on a quota basis, so if you don't meet the quota for that month and in time to get a permit, you're going to be paying extra duty or surtax or tax or whatever they call it. Surtax. Okay, food is a big one. Then we now have the Safe Food Act. So you have to be registered to even import food with CFIA and make sure that you have your license to do so. And of course, labeling and marking requirements, make sure that the product you're bringing in is, and if you are looking at reselling that, there's different regulations if you're having that for yourself to be used, or if it's being used in, say, only in nursing homes or medical facilities, or if you're selling that. Everything has some rule against it. And here's how you calculate your duties in your GST. You will take your value for duty, that's the Canadian dollars, so that's your value that you're purchasing from, could be from US, and you apply the exchange rate to get your Canadian dollars, and times the rate of duty, and that will give you, at this case, we have 4%, and that gives you your duty. Now you add your duty and your value of the goods in Canadian dollars together, and that's what the GST is paid on. So virtually it's the same thing as saying your GST is calculated on your value, and it's also calculated on the duty amount. So every documentation, every document has a story. You want to start with your purchase order or your contract. You want to go and you want to put on your terms to your vendor. You want to clearly identify your goods ordered, of course, your quantities of price, what are all your terms and conditions and your Incoterms. You want to clarify all those good things. And as well as you want to identify, well, what do I want you to do or send to my broker when you're shipping these goods into Canada? Most, you need to have them give you a Canada Customs or provide a Canada Customs invoice or a commercial invoice, as long as it has all the details that it's on a Canada Customs invoice. Because each one of those data elements or each one of that information on a Canada Customs invoice, we use and transmit to customs. And then you want to make sure that we have all, if you found out beforehand, there's a participating agency involved and they want additional information, you want to make sure, well, what is that information, that it's also on the paperwork. Is there free trade certificates? If it's coming from a country that is a preferential country, that we have one, you want to make sure that they provide the proper trade certificate. There is no such thing as a carte blanche across the board certificate of origin. Every trade agreement has its own certificate or verification statement. Like in Kuzma now, it's a verification statement. It's not a standard form. It can be in any format. It can be on a piece of paper, toilet paper, as long as it's there and it's signed. Okay, and so you want to make sure you have all that. And you want to identify to the vendor if they're saying yes, 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 I can give that to you. But what if they don't? You want to make sure that you have something there to protect yourself in case they don't give that to you, or they gave it to you and it was not right. They did not qualify. So then customs comes back onto you as the importer. You have to pay back all the duty because they said no, it didn't qualify. What repercussions do you have to go back to your vendor on? Carrier bill of lading, we need the carrier bill of lading as well on that, and I'm not going forward, okay. All right, so we start with your Canada Customs invoice or your commercial invoice. Every field has a story. Every field we have to transmit at the time of release. Most of the information is mandatory, some is not, however. It's best to have more than not enough or what is essential. And it contains all the necessary information in order to do your research for all the items that we went over. Your certificates of origin permits, the information declared on these documents, they must relate to the information on the customs invoice or commercial invoice. It can't be a guessing game. And the same as your certificates of origin, there's no assumptions here. You do not want customs or anyone making assumptions. They all have to be clearly identified. So as a rule of thumb, generic descriptions is not good. I mean, that, you know, that you can't help in some cases like lettuce, radishes. I mean, the lettuce is the lettuce, the radish. But you cannot say parts for a automobile. You have to give the part number, what is the part involved. So you have to make sure they all relate. So if they came to you, remember, these are all legal documents. So customs audit you, you can't say, Well, I didn't mean that part. I meant this part. Well, I didn't mean that one. I meant this one. It totally has to be clearly identifiable with each other. The bills of lading, this will give the broker, and it will identify the country of export. It identifies the shipper, address. We have to transmit all this to customs to let them know the pieces and weight. We identify the pieces and weight on the bill of lading to make sure it matches the pieces and weight that's on the Canada Customs invoice or commercial invoice. And that's why you want on the Canada Customs invoice, there's a spot for the pieces and weight, because that would tell us, well, we're missing some paperwork, or this isn't the right backup paperwork for this shipment. Maybe the driver gave us the wrong ones. Maybe the shipper gave too many things. So it's like a cross check to make sure we have the right paperwork with the right shipment. The delivery address in Canada, as well as the date of direct shipment. Now, and just so you know, that customs also uses that information as data as to identify, well, should we go and examine these goods or not examine these goods? Maybe that certain delivery address in Canada is under a watch right now. Okay, there's a lot of information that all this goes to customs, and there's a reason for all this information going to customs. I'm not going to go through all the reasons, but they have valid reasons why they need this. And it's also used, all this data is used for Stats Canada, and Stats Canada uses all this information to make trade agreements, to give companies some stats. If you went onto Stats Canada website, you can see the huge amount of information that's there. All that data is used to do a lot of different studies. It's used for trade agreements. Companies will use that. It's actually quite extensive. Just to let you know, PF Collins, we're on their speed dial, because if there's a large importation into Canada, all of a sudden the trade stats go off. And if the trade stats for import-export are not in line, again, that's the economy of the country we're talking about. They want to know what the heck is going on. Because ideally you want to have a balance there, or ideally you want to have more exports and imports, because that shows that we have a good manufacturing going on. So if it goes off, then they want to go, whoa, what happened here? Because it really affects the Bank of Canada, which affects the Bank of Canada rates, which affects the stock market. It's a rippling effect. So they'll phone in and say, can you tell me what this was about? And of course we do. And then they'll adjust their stats in the background. So nobody understood how much that goes on in an import. And it works in the U.S. as well. The U.S. and Canada are on what's called an Exchange Information Act. So what data we transmit to customs for a release, if it's coming from the U.S., gets transmitted to U.S. Customs for their stats, because U.S. Customs will also phone Ottawa stats to say, we're showing a huge big influx of all of a sudden, like automobiles that are being manufactured. This is a true story out of Nunavut. And they'll phone up the government of Nunavut and say, do you have this factory that was built up here that we didn't know about? So then they went back to it actually got them excited, the premier of Nunavut going, oh, wow, look at this. Well, look at this. When they went back to the U.S. broker, they found that the person that was keying in the entry picked from the drop down the wrong province code. And then their computer just kept picking it up over and over and over time. So they threw their stats of where these automobiles were being manufactured. Instead of Ontario, they were picking Nunavut. I know that doesn't sound exciting to you, but I thought it was exciting. So importing your goods. This is the customs release process. Your carrier transmits, and it goes on through. Your carrier transmits their data elements from the bill of lading to CBSA. Then CBSA gets the data elements from us, it gets matched together. And at that time, they will decide, well, do they want to review it? Do they want to pull it over for exam? Or is it going to be released once the goods have arrived in Canada? And then after it's been arrived and the goods are released, we submit the payment of the duties and the GST. And then you think you're off the hook because it's in the back door? No, they can come and look at you later. So post-verification audits, this is after it's been released. They have up to 6 years. It's been my experience, they won't go back 6 years. It's typically 2 and maybe then 4, depending on the severity or what it is that they find. And this is part of their review. If they do a full audit, they usually will only do an audit based on, okay, we want to review your tariff. They might be wanting to review your valuation, or they're targeting everything from a certain vendor. There's all different ways that they do that. There is a list that they come out with every January and July 1st of what they are targeting for post audits. And that's available on our website. And I keep that up every July 1st and January to give you the heads up. And it also tells you how much duty that they have found that they have recovered. And then we're going to go into CARM. This is the new project by Customs, and I don't know, can you see
that? The Canada Border Services Agency is among the top collectors of revenue for the Government of Canada, second only to the Canada Revenue Agency. The billions of dollars we collect annually in duties and taxes are critical to our economy. To sustain Canada's competitive advantage in trade, the CBSA is modernizing the way it assesses imported goods and manages revenue. The CBSA Assessment and Revenue Management Project, better known as CARM, is a multi-year initiative that will transform the importation process. The CARM solution, an online portal, will give our trade community access to border services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Canada's importers and customs brokers will be able to use online tools to classify goods and calculate duties and taxes, submit e-declarations, make e-payments, and view up-to-date account information, and become paperless by default. CARM will allow importers and customs brokers to tailor the services they need to manage their own accounts. When fully implemented, CARM will make it easier for businesses to work with the agency, improve consistency in applying trade rules and decisions, and reduce repetitive information requirements. Digital, innovative, efficient. CARM will be key to modernizing border services, strengthening Canada's economy.
So this is a project that Customs is currently very involved with, and that they have been unrolling that over the past couple of years. They started with the accounts receivable ledger, and they're moving on into the new digital environment. It's an online portal that every importer will have to register in. They will have to, when they're in there, now they don't have it available or ready for us to view, so I can only tell you what they've been telling us in Ottawa. And that is that you will have to register your company. You will make sure that if you are GST registered, you will go into the portal and set your account up, but you'll have to make sure that your name and address is exactly as per your GST number. You will have to assign your customs broker, as well as any other parties that are in there. You will be getting your own duty bond. You will no longer be utilizing your customs broker's bond, and you will be making your own duties and GST payment on the portal. You'll be getting your own statements, and you can generate reports in there. And again, I can only tell you what we know so far, and this is what it is. They have gotten a lot of money to process, and it's also going to be used for targeting tools, which you know, if you are a regular business and you know, you don't have anything to worry about, but it's also can be used for catching goods coming into the country illegally, like drugs, and they'll be able to identify postal codes for deliveries of targeted. It's quite a fascinating project. It's a huge project that they're undergoing, and that's going to be unrolled starting next year, 2021, 2020, as far as the importer is concerned. So that's up and coming, and you can always go onto the CBSA website to get any new information as it becomes available. As well, you can visit PF Collins on our website. We have excellent kind of cheat sheets available for you that you can go in. I just pulled some of them out as an example, that we try to put them in the best to our abilities in layman terms, so you can understand better of what it is that you're looking for. And we regularly add what we think is important information for an importer to know, and you can certainly go there and look at that. It's a great website, and go into it regularly. There's also an excellent book put out by the CFCB called Introduction to Customs Administration and Procedures. It came out, a revised second edition this year, and it is a very good overview of customs. There's also the one called Incoterms 2020 that's put by the International Chamber of Commerce, ICC, if you need to know, as well as, you know, go on and search on the website for the Incoterms. But there are some tools that are available for you. And I'm trying to, okay. And we also have a great consulting department at PF Collins, and we can review your project plans and your POs and where you want to save duties and taxes. We do all that for you. So if you're thinking about importing and you don't want to do all the research yourself, give us a call, and we can certainly help you with that and go through that. So here's your to-do list. As you get your GST number, do your research. You want clear instructions to your vendor. You want to set up an account with PF Collins. And if you're responsible for the actual physical movement of the shipment, you want to contact a carrier or us, because as I said, we can move it from A to B, and we can do all the paperwork for you. We'll even do cartwheels for you if you really want us to. And here is our contact information. And next year, we're 100 years old. Not me personally, the company, okay? So if I'm 100 years old and still here, I think you better examine my head. Okay, so thank you very much.